will start recording. And I'll bring up the screen. Where's my share screen gone there? The bright green button. So we are now on to the ego body illusion.
Oh, God. All right, I'm going to mute myself now. I'm going to be listening.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said before.
I think it was, oh God.
Ah, about the ego body illusion.
Yes, yes. Shall I start or do you want to start, Coralie?
Oh.
What was that?
I said go on, but then I was just looking at the page. Does the next one go over the page, or are we all right?
No, the next one's finished as well. Finished.
Okay.
I've been fiddling with it before I got on, so try and get them
Right.
as much as possible on the same page. So I'll read this one then.
Okay.
All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. The ego exerts maximal vigilance about what it permits into awareness. And this is not the way a balanced mind holds together. The ego is thrown further off balance because it keeps its primary motivation from your awareness and raises control rather than sanity to predominance. The ego has every reason to do this, according to the thought system which gave rise to it and which it serves. Sane judgment would inevitably judge against the ego and must be obliterated by the ego in the interests of self-preservation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I just ask a random question?
Yeah.
To do with the ego, obviously.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that you can pick people's egos more, or when they're sitting in their ego? Because it's something I've become a lot more aware of now, and it can be subtle at times because, well, depending on the person, but it just seems to be more. I just seem to be able to see it a little bit more now.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. It's a lot easier to deal with people thinking, you know, is this their way of protecting themselves, or is this where is it coming from their perspective? Even if they're not aware of it, it means that I can deal with them in a more loving way because you know it's not actually them talking.
Yep. Yeah.
And it comes back to that whole looking past the personality to the soul thing. For me, that's how I see it.
Yep. Excellent. Good. Thank you.
What do you think? That's all right. Not a random question at all. It's on point, I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree with that, Coralie?
Yeah, I just and I don't. You can tell me if it's my ego saying this or my soul, but I was sort of think, oh look, you two are much more enlightened than me. That I sort of I'm like seeing that in myself, and I'm going, oh yeah.
I definitely
got a lot of time in ego.
Yeah, I can definitely see when I'm coming from ego. Well, not always, and it's not always at the time. Sometimes it'll come up later and go, oh, hey, what were you thinking when you said that? But yeah, I think it's becoming closer and closer to the point of actual response to be able to go, hold on a minute, is this really what I want to say? Is this really what I want to share, project, whatever?
Yeah. Or even just think about it. I mean, you know, how I think about what's happened or happening.
Definitely,
sort of like, as soon as I get a reminder about ego, then I'm like, oh yeah, sort of settle down my own sort of story that I've made up about what's going on.
Yeah. And so much of this talks about our thought processes and being aware of our thoughts, before anything else, isn't it?
Mm.
Linda, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't. It's interesting. I'm glad I asked the question, actually.
Yeah, it was a good question. They're always good questions. Here comes Jane. Hello, Jane. Waiting for audio.
Oh,
Here we go. How are you, Jane?
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
hi.
I'm not
I know
sure where
Joe's
Gary
not,
is today.
I know
So-
Joe's not with us.
Yeah.
Is Gary?
I'm not sure where he is. I've sent him a message, so hopefully everything's okay.
Yeah, right. I know it's not like him.
No, he usually will send me a message, even if it's just 5 minutes beforehand if something's happening. So just hoping everything's okay there. We've just started on the ego body illusion.
Oh yeah.
Have you read this at all, Jane, already? Or
No, I haven't.
yeah, I don't read ahead either. I read through the lessons, but yeah, it's kind of fun to not know what's coming next year. So we've just done
It
number
is.
1. Carly, do you want to do number 2?
Sure. A major source of the ego's off-balanced state is its lack of discrimination between the body and the thoughts of God. Thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. The ego therefore either distorts them or refuses to accept them. It cannot, however, make them cease to be. It therefore tries to conceal not only unacceptable body impulses, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it. Being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. By perceiving them as the same, the ego attempts to save itself from being swept away, as it would surely be in the presence of knowledge.
I will point out the question that Linda made before you joined, Jane, which was a really good question. It was about an observation about having noticed that it's becoming easier to spot people's ego when people are coming from ego rather than who they actually are. Yeah, you're finding that?
Mhm. Yes,
Mm.
very much.
So it's not just about ourselves, but seeing in other people, so that we can kind of be more forgiving and understanding of them.
That's so true. There is one, I do have a question about thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. I guess I'm questioning that.
Mm.
And I'm questioning it because people who have a large ego can kind of feel like God's on their side.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
my team won because I'm favored by God, whatever that team is.
And the way that they talk about the ego in the course seems a little bit different to how we've come to perceive the ego as well, I think, to some extent, because I kind of feel like in some ways we need ego. I mean, Wayne Dyer had a huge ego. Sometimes you need that to be able to get your message out there. So I think you can use ego as a tool as well.
Mhm, mhm.
And when people are saying God's on my side, therefore I justify my actions, I mean, that's not.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's magical thinking. It's
Yes.
yeah.
Magical thinking. I like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like,
Mm.
well, I guess that's what keeps people buying lottery tickets.
Yeah.
Except for when, just recently I read that you have a much better chance of getting struck by lightning than you do in winning a large lottery. It's like, what?
And we still like to gamble.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah. So many other ways to be lucky, isn't there?
Mm.
Be lucky and grateful. And it's not about the money, it's about, what shows up in your life and just being grateful for that.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Because most of the people who win lotto end up back where they started within 5 years.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah, that seems pretty unbelievable, but the statistics bear that out.
Yeah. I can't remember where I read it from, but it was a course that I was doing where the book came up, and it was something in there that said that as far as your money journey goes, if you suddenly get an increase of more than 20% of your income or your wealth, you psychologically and subconsciously will find a way to come back to what you were before. And it's the same with
Mm,
if you lose more than 20%, you'll somehow find a way to come back to like what is your equilibrium. And that's why
right, right.
small increments are better, because your subconscious and your way of living, your way of thinking can kind of step into that a little bit more easily. So it's not just about getting the money, it's then having to change your whole
Mm.
way of being with money and your subconscious and your beliefs about money and wealth and prosperity, which is
Mhm.
not just about money, to actually be able to keep that wealth going.
Interesting.
Right, right. Hmm.
Number 3, Jane, do you want to read that one?
Sure. Okay, 3. Any thought system that confuses God and the body must be insane. Yet this confusion is essential to the ego, which judges only in terms of threat or non-threat to itself. In one sense, the ego's fear of God is at least logical, since the idea of him does dispel the ego. But fear of the body, with which the ego identifies so closely, makes no sense at all.
Fear of the body. And what does the ego consider not threatening? Is it status quo? Is there anything? I mean, what doesn't threaten the ego? Status quo, I guess. Everything stays the same, therefore the ego feels safe. What else is
Mm.
there that doesn't threaten the ego?
When, to me, I just think of when the ego isn't winning,
Mm.
when the ego isn't perceiving itself as getting, having. more, it's like the faucet's turned on and I want more. To me, I see it as a cavern that's never filled.
Yeah. And I think the individual who when looking at an ego and an individual, their ego or my ego will have something that it needs more of, and it wants to fill that cavern, but it's never going to be satisfied with that.
Right.
And it's not actually even what's going to, when you come to the end of your journey and think of what your life actually, what your purpose was, it isn't necessarily in line with that purpose at all, is it?
Right, because you based your life and your personhood on what you got, what you get, what you have, the constant measuring, keeping up, keeping score.
Comparison.
Yes, constant comparison, constant separation,
Yeah.
and the ultimate in loneliness.
In one sense, the ego's fear of God is at least logical. So, yeah, okay, we don't really need to. Imagine being fearful of God, but I guess a lot of religion's about that too. It's like you do what you're told, or else, deal with the wrath of God. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It made me think about like bad habits, and because I was a smoker and I lived cigarette to cigarette, I was sort of like working out, how long is it going to be till my next break and I can have another one, and it's that, and it's very ego. It's that sort of it doesn't offer you anything after you've had a smoke. You're not like, yay, now I'm fulfilled with cigaretteness. No, you're just waiting for the next thing.
Right.
The next hit, yeah. And I guess
it doesn't give you anything, and you know that that's not good for you, and you carry on anyway.
Yes. So the getting of things that the ego requires, there's no lasting, sustainable feeling of purpose in it. Yeah. And I'm sure there's things that I do that are like that too. So that's a food for thought. I'll be thinking about my next habit.
Yeah, and Corley, how long ago did you quit?
Ages ago, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really glad I did.
Oh, yes. Yeah, not easy, right?
It sort of is, because I found it wasn't easy until I did it, and then once
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, because it was just like, once I decided that I wasn't going to have the next cigarette, which took me years to get to, but I just wasn't going to have the next one, then it was like I'd got on the other side of this massive wall, and we're sort of partying and healthy on this side, and everything's all right. And I can still go and hang out with the smokers if I want to. It doesn't take anything away from me not having a cigarette.
Wow.
I think everyone I've met who's quit smoking and done it successfully it's all just come down to that decision. I'm deciding that I don't smoke. I'm deciding I'm a non-smoker.
Mm.
And for
Mhm.
them, yeah, same. They tell me the same thing, Carly, that it's like, yeah, it just doesn't phase me anymore. I have no interest in it. Whereas my dad, who was a chain smoker, he quit a couple of times, but he was doing it not for himself. He was doing it in pressure from mum,
Mm.
to the point where his attitude and his like anger was so bad she bought him the cigarettes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
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 Because it wasn't his decision.
Mm. I
Yeah.
know. I
Decision,
also
deciding.
live with a smoker. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, you can't
No.
get anyone else to do it.
So number 4, I guess I'll read that one. The body is the ego's home by its own election. It is the only identification with which the ego feels safe, since the body's vulnerability is its own best argument that you cannot be of God. This is the belief that the ego sponsors eagerly. Yet the ego hates the body because it cannot accept it as good enough to be its home. Here is where the mind becomes actually dazed. Being told by the ego that it's really part of the body and that the body is its protector, the mind is also told that the body cannot protect it. Therefore, the mind asks, where can I go for protection? To which the ego replies, turn to me. The mind, and not without cause, reminds the ego that it has itself insisted that it is identified with the body. So there is no point in turning to it for protection. The ego has no real answer to this because there is none, but it does have a typical solution. It obliterates the question from the mind's awareness. Once out of awareness, the question can and does produce uneasiness, but it cannot be answered because it cannot be asked. Ooh. That reminds me of like how many times you've got a group of people just doing something that they've always done. And then someone else comes in and goes, why are you doing it that way? And all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, there's no logic to it, because no one's questioned it.
Right.
It's part of procedure
Right.
or whatever. There's no logic to it, yeah?
Mm.
There's a better way.
And
There's a better way.
yeah, and I think religions, formal religions can tend to be that way. People belong to a church and, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way we've always thought. And I think that people as well as organizations and groups, really, I think it's, what was it? Karl Marx had a saying, religion is the opium of the people.
Mm.
And I think that in groups, organizations, you do tend to not think for yourself. You want to be led. And the ego wants to lead. So in essence, it's like we might as well be a group unto ourselves as a singular human, one person. Because when we go along with what always was, and we say it always will be, and we're not open to change, and the ego, oh, who's this? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's, let me, that's my phone. Sorry. I never get a call at this time. It's nighttime here
Yeah.
where I am. So
Mm. Mm.
anyways, yeah, so yeah, it's kind of it's interesting that the ego wants to rule, and it ends up when we do turn to our egos, it ends up ruling us, because ego equals fear.
Yeah.
And the ego says, oh, you need protection. You need to be conscious of being protected. And it says, yeah, where can I go for protection?
Mm.
Turn to me. And it's like, no.
Yeah, and the protection is definitely all about fear, isn't it? So if you're not fearful, you don't need protection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can I
You
just
don't
add
need ego.
something?
Yeah, yeah.
So Jane, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I mean, this is part of the reason why I've started my own little business, because I don't want to be in a corporate office anymore.
Yeah.
Is you're given procedures and, plans on how to do things, and you're not allowed to use your own creativity in most cases. I was fortunate at the university I was working at where we were allowed to do that. We were allowed to use our creativity and have a say. And I found that actually hurt my ego even more, in the respect that I had to abide by these procedures and these rules, knowing very well that it could be done in a much better way, a more efficient way, a time-saving way, all of that. And not being able to, not given the opportunity to do that prior to my last role at the university. So I think it's interesting, or maybe even confusing, that the ego wants to take over. The ego wants to go in and go, oh, look at me, I'm so good at my job. But then on the other hand, your ego is bound by the rules and regulations that are provided for you, and you have to follow those in order to, keep your job, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It is. There's also
Yeah.
that sort of coming in with better ideas thing is pretty ego-y, I reckon. It's like I've found this, like with this community garden, we'd like more people to be in it. And people will come along with great ideas of how we can get more people and tell us the things. And of course, we've tried them all. And it's like, but you're not coming.
Yeah.
So you're actually not helping. You're just, sort of add to things that we can do when there's not that many of us.
So I guess it really depends on the circumstances, doesn't it, as to what is actually going on. You've got that corporate attitude of, especially doing the FIFO thing, you're not allowed common sense. Common sense is ruled out, and if you use your common sense, you don't have a job anymore. So, everything's got to be followed word for word in the procedure. And even if you do, they'll still blame you if there's an incident. So, it's kind of difficult. And again, the reason why I decided to do gardening, I work by myself. I can do it how I want to do it, treat it like my own. Obviously safety first, which I didn't follow a couple of weeks ago, and ended up landing on my tailbone and still very sore. But that's and I think my ego was more bruised than anything else, I have to say, in that situation.
Mm. Mm.
Although it still bloody hurts.
Oh,
I know. Thank you. Sympathy.
I know. Well, yeah. Yeah, I've fallen on my tailbone before, and it's an ultra sensitive area.
Oh, is it what?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, yeah. Not a nice place to land, that's for sure.
It's like you need a blow up donut to sit on, right?
I went to yoga last night, and there's a particular move where you sit cross-legged and then you put your arms back behind you and you need to lift your bum up. So you're sort of
Yeah.
like the inverted arc. And
Uh-huh.
I just sat there and watched everybody else doing it because there was no way I could do that. It just was so painful.
Oh.
Still,
Yeah, so 2 weeks on Friday it'll be. So I don't know whether I've done more damage than bruising it or not. I sort of thought, well, if it's still like this at the end of next week, I might just go and get it checked out.
yeah.
Mind you, there's not much they can do about it anyway,
I think so.
except give you a lecture on safety. I don't need that.
Mm.
Yeah, I think organisations are very tricky to try and
Yeah.
to try
Is
to.
it just any organisation? You know, you were saying about, like Jane was saying about organised religion and corporations. They've got quite a lot in common, that they're,
Yeah.
you know, so big and
Yeah.
structured, and
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got all these rules and regulations.
Yeah, but as soon as you make a rule, it becomes outdated. You know,
Yeah.
by the time everyone's caught up with it.
When Linda, when you were talking about like with FIFO, when they make all these rules and regulations, you're not allowed to use your common sense. To some extent, though, I can see that often, like you see these warnings on products now that you think, why do you have to warn me that my coffee's going to be hot?
Yeah.
So,
You know, at one stage, I remember driving into McDonald's. This is going back a few years now, but I drove into McDonald's to get a coffee, and it was basically cold. So I went back because I like my coffee really hot, and they said, we can't serve it to you hot anymore. I said, you were kidding me. I might as well just make one at home and have it in a travel cup. God, I wish I thought about travel cups then. But you know what I mean? It's like, if something happens, they just go into the absolute opposite extreme. And then other people follow. And it's just ridiculous because nobody's really practiced it to see if it's going to work. All it's doing is pissing people off.
they're just trying to protect themselves from getting sued.
Well, they are. Exactly.
That's the same with the FIFO work. They just keep
It is.
making rules because someone was stupid, so they have to make a rule about it for everybody else.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's actually applied to ego, so it makes up rules even though there's no common sense behind it. It's exactly what happens. It's like, oh, look, I've had a traumatic event, therefore this is a new rule that I'm putting in place.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you're going to follow that rule.
Yeah.
Until you become conscious of it and go, it doesn't apply anymore. Thank you, but no.
And I think actually that's a really good point too, V, is being able to say to the ego, I don't need that anymore. I appreciate you looking out for me and protecting me, but it's all good. I'm fine.
Yeah, that's one thing that I find difficult with this course is because the stuff I've done with Gary is like, you know, there are parts of you that are there. All these parts of you are there to protect you.
Yeah.
And when you can find them and address them and find out what their story is and why they're there, then they feel heard and you can say thank you, but that's not helping me go forward. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna rethink how I do this and how, you know, thanks for coming to the table, but integrate with what you actually want in life in a kind of hypnotic state that you're kind of putting this together. And it just, that fear's gone then.
And I think too that you know, throughout this course, it's learning, because you can't get rid of the ego. The ego is a part of you. Is that correct? Am I right there?
I've always thought it was. And if you get rid of your ego, then you don't have any momentum.
No. So this course is teaching me that while I can't get rid of my ego, I can learn to work cohesively with it. For it to
Right.
provide me with what I need at a particular moment. And then, you know, my spirit or my soul can actually say, well, that's either going to hurt me or hurt somebody else, or it's going to protect me. So, you know, and make your mind up then, make the decision then. It's hard because this is complete opposite of what we were taught growing up.
Mm. Yeah, for sure.
True.
So this is how we can kind of apply using our ego to actually create another tool for our purpose, our actual purpose of what we're actually here for, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't think you need to demolish it. I think you employ it. But
Yeah,
how you do that in an organisation with however many egos involved who've all got their own agenda.
It's all about politics. So if you're good at politics, but I never was. And I remember being told one day, Linda, you need to learn which battles to fight. And I thought, oh God, I just want to fight them all. Because my ego wanted to be right. My ego wanted to be right in everything that I did or said. And it got me into trouble, big trouble, to the extent where I lost my job. So I think, yes, you just got to sit back, take note, make decisions for yourself, as long as other people aren't getting hurt in the process. Yeah. And over and out.
I think as well, I mean, I have to play in the tax laws field, being an accountant, and you know, a lot of it doesn't make sense. And I think we've all got those. If we're working in any kind of team or organisation, there are rules that don't make any sense, and we've just got to find a way. Like with tax laws, I learn them enough so that I can know how to employ them for my clients in the best way possible for them without breaking them. And I think in a lot of cases, that's just what we need to do. We need to remember what our purpose is and work around whatever system that we're dealing with. I also think leadership's extremely important, like with Linda's example of the supermarket that had bad management, so all the staff were unhappy. It's all got to come from leadership. And that, again, for leadership, thinking about as a human being, our leadership has to be our purpose. It has to be, this is what we're aiming for. This is how we go, this is how we go about getting there in a ethical, sustainable way. And unfortunately, we have a lot of leaders who don't come from that place. They're coming from ego. And the leadership is just so important because it affects everybody underneath. If whoever's leading is saying this is the way we do things, and you've got no choice, you toe the line and you get out.
Yeah, I think it's about the trickle down effect.
Yeah.
It starts at the top, and I guess it's like saying, you know, it's contagious. Our attitude can be very contagious.
Yeah,
and if you get enough like-minded people, we can either destroy things or we can build things up, right?
Yeah. I think as well, because I'm thinking of particular meetings that I've had to be going to recently, and there's a lot of ego involved in the meeting, and I'm meeting one of the girls later this week to talk about how we can try and get us to actually stay on track. And I'm not the president of the meeting, so it's not really my job, but in a way as well, because we all have a single purpose in having these meetings. Therefore, I think I can be a disruptive influence in a very positive way by just coming up with ideas and presenting them in the meeting for discussion so that we actually have something else to focus on. That's what I'm thinking of doing.
Mm.
And I kind of feel this paragraph is helping me.
Hmm.
Working out how to do that. So that's cool. Shall we move on to number 5?
Yeah, is that me?
Yep.
This is the question that must be asked. Where can I go for protection? Seek and ye shall find does not mean that you should seek blindly and desperately for something you would not recognize. Meaningful seeking is consciously undertaken, consciously organized, and consciously directed. The goal must be formulated clearly and kept in mind. Learning and wanting to learn are inseparable. You learn best when you believe what you are trying to learn is of value to you. However, not everything you may want to learn has lasting value. Indeed, many of the things you want to learn may be chosen because their value will not last.
I'm a little bit confused that we need to ask for protection though. Is that just an example or I don't know.
That protection from our ego, though.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't think we even need protection from our ego, do we?
Well, in order to protect ourselves, something's got to make a decision.
Well, the ego can run away with itself.
Mm.
You know, think about fear. Someone who is very fear-driven, who's neurotically fearful.
Like most of the population.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, yes, exactly. You know, that's loaded with ego because it's the me, I, me.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I'll just about 2 hours ago, someone who I was talking to, a friend of mine that I don't live near. I'm a couple of, well, probably about a good 400, 350 miles away from that person. But when they came and visited me this past summer, they noticed that I didn't, they were with me for a week, and they noticed that I don't lock my doors at all. Like even when I go away on vacation at night, I don't lock my doors. And then I haven't locked my doors as far back as I can remember. It's been at least 23 years.
Wow.
And you're in New York
Now,
City, are you?
No, I'm not in New York City. I'm 2.5 hours north. I'm about 10 miles north of the capital of New York, which is Albany. And I've moved, let's see, 3 times in the last 23 years. And I don't live out in the country. But I don't have a fear. Do you know that there's a saying, you know, what you think about, the more you think about something, it expands, right? I mean, it's like a law of science. And now I've even gone to, now I don't lock my car. I don't lock it at night. It's outside. I don't lock it when I go into a store. And I'm kind of having fun with it because I really am, because this whole thing of the ego and protection, like, totally annoys me. it's like protection from what? You know, I don't, obviously I don't live a fear-driven life, but I've never had anything happen to me. Although I was probably, I think this was about 11 years ago. I worked in a bank and we got robbed um by a wild man. And it was very scary. Very, very scary because he broke the legs of one of the tellers. I was in my office watching the whole thing, and so it's not because I'm, Susie Sunshine and don't believe that something bad things don't happen to good people. I know they do. But I just don't, I just, there's like a knowing that I'm not going to be perpetrated upon. I'm just not. I would say, I would have a heart attack before, I might fall prey to having a heart attack before I'll ever get accosted in any way. I don't, you know, I can entertain that more than I can, locking my doors. So this is kind of interesting because somebody said to me 2 hours ago, they said, when I was with you for that week this summer, I started looking at how silly I am that I lock my doors. And I stopped locking my doors as much. But and it's like, yeah, see, fear is so contagious.
Yeah. I
So anyways, stay tuned. Maybe maybe I'll make the world news someday because oh geez.
When I first moved into this house in Nana, I had to leave the next day to go to the city to clean up the place I had been living in. And I locked myself out straight away, locked myself out. I didn't have the keys to the car as well. So it's just, and I found out how easy it is to break in.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it. I mean, that is it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think we fall prey to our ego and we fall prey to habits, being told to be afraid of what? Like who you want my television? Come in and take it. Well, I don't know what else you want. You don't want I don't have expensive silverware. Anyways. So it takes time, but you start questioning the status quo of the fear-driven mantras that have been going on for ages, right?
Yeah. Do we want to do the next one before we've got 7 minutes?
Sure.
Because it's a pretty big one. Wow, we could have done a whole section today then. Okay, because that goes on the next page. I'll read it.
Oh, okay.
The ego thinks it is an advantage not to commit itself to anything that is eternal, because the eternal must come from God. Eternalness is the one function the ego has tried to develop, but has systematically failed to achieve. The ego compromises with the issue of the eternal, just as it does with all issues touching on the real question in any way. By becoming involved with tangential issues, it hopes to hide the real question and keep it out of mind. The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose. Preoccupations with problems set up to be incapable of solution are favourite ego devices for impeding learning progress. In all these diversionary tactics, however, the one question that is never asked by those who pursue them is, what for? This is the question that you must learn to ask in connection with everything. What is the purpose? Whatever it is, it will direct your efforts automatically. When you make a decision of purpose, then you have made a decision about your future effort, a decision that will remain in effect until you change your mind. Well, that sums up what we've been talking about pretty well, doesn't it? That's how Coralie quit smoking. You made the decision.
It's interesting that they made me think of like little kids, you know, how they go, oh, but why? Oh, but why? Or what for, or whatever, you know, they just keep asking and asking. And so that gets trained out of us quite young because you know, you reach a limit with the kids.
Yeah, that's so true. When did we stop asking?
Yeah.
Just toe the line.
Yeah. Very young.
I'm writing my final statement. I think that summarizes what we were talking about so well. And procrastination is a great tool of the ego, isn't it? When you've got a big task to do and you don't want to deal with it, so what do? You find other things that will distract you from achieving your purpose.
Well, you know, isn't procrastination, it's being involved in something that you don't have passion for. So how often, I think we have to ask ourselves, you know, how often do I procrastinate is probably in keeping with how often I'm not in love with what maybe the many things that I'm doing or the choices that I'm making. You know?
And I always come back to what I read in Napoleon Hill about fear and how things that, you know, it just coloured fear in a completely different way as to how it shows up. And procrastination is one of the ways that fear shows up. So
yeah, that's so true.
And I always, from the reading in this, for me, I also feel that the ego isn't just about thinking it's bigger than everything. It's trying to keep us small and protected. This is how it protects us, by keeping us small and not allowing us to go out and, you know, do the things that we're actually meant to do, because that's scary. That's different.
And I guess, of course, that begs the question again of why is it scary? I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right? So, but every time there's something new that comes along, we do fall into some kind of a fear thing because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. And once we get through it and we realize that the outcome is fine, but we still do it next time. Well, I know I do.
It's like what Coralie said before about, and I wrote it down, it's a great quote, it wasn't easy until I did it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right. Yes.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, it wasn't easy till I did it. Wow.
I'm gonna write it down myself.
Yeah, that really says a lot, doesn't it?
Oh. Well, I think we better tie up with our final statement for the day, for this week. Who's got what? Anybody got a statement that they have come up with from our reading today?
Yes. Can I go first so that no one
Yes,
else
you
steals
can.
mine?
Absolutely.
Because there seems to be a lot of stealing of phrases that goes on. So I'm going to go with, I think it was the last paragraph that was read. Gosh, sorry, I can't read it properly. When you make a decision of purpose, then you have made a decision about your future effort. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Hmm,
Beautiful.
that's good.
Anyone else?
Yeah, actually, a thing that V said, that the ego keeps us small and protected.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'd say I'm not afraid of being small, but I'm most afraid of my greatness.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's a double down.
Hmm.
Nice. Like that, Jane.
Yeah.
Hmm. Mine is I ask what for to keep my purpose in mind. That's what I'm going to do.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Excellent. Well, I guess,
Thank you,
yeah, it's the
ladies.
top of the hour.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let us know that our dear friend Gary is okay.
Yes,
Yes.
please.
As soon as I hear, I'll let you know.
I just had this
Yeah.
feeling that his electricity had gone out or something. And he's
Yeah.
not able to communicate in any way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully
that
it's
could
something
be.
just
Mm.
small. And inconvenience. Let's hope it was an inconvenience. That's all.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well,
Thank you,
thanks,
ladies.
ladies.
Been
Yes,
lovely.
that was a great session. Thank you very much. You're all
I
wonderful.
know. Girl power.
Absolutely. All right. We'll see you next week.
All right,
Thanks.
take
Okay.
care, everyone.
Have a good
Be
one.
well.
Bye bye.